portfolio that includes values and transparency and the rule of law. Alongside your colleague Thierry Breton, you recently unveiled the European Media Freedom Act that Noel mentioned. So I'd like to hand the floor to you to tell us about your vision for media in Europe.
Ladies and gentlemen, good morning, dear Noel, dear friends. I am extremely happy to be here today, especially after my return from Ukraine yesterday. And I have to say you did not help me with the film, because I'm still full of impressions from the country where I met students, I met journalists, I met people in hospitals, injured, without legs. I met politicians. From all of them I heard that yes, we are ready to suffer and die for our desire to join you, the democratic West. They didn't say it like that, but I felt it there very strongly. And I think that it's the historical opportunity for all of us to stand on the right side. And I want to thank EBU, I want to thank all of you for what you have been doing for the country which is under fire now. Because your solidarity has been fundamental and is fundamental, and we all need to continue our efforts. I spoke to the journalists there yesterday. I asked them whether there is still high absorption capacity of the editors in European countries, whether there is still sufficient attraction for the war. And they said, yes, the interest is declining. And so I think that this is a very strong message also for all of us here. We have to keep the attention high, because if we manage to keep the attention to the war in Ukraine high, we will be able to keep the patience of people and their determination to support the leaders in supporting everything we must do for Ukraine, from delivery of weapons through humanitarian aid and many other things. So thank you very much. We have to continue what we are doing. The Commission also invested into the national public broadcaster in Ukraine. Already before the war, the Commission provided for 5 million euro to help with modernization, and we are now investing additional 7 million euro to help the broadcaster face the war and continue a good job covering the war. This comes on top of a series of projects to support journalists on the ground. And I visited an EU-funded center led by Reporters Without Borders yesterday. It was in Lviv. There are 2 more in Kharkiv and Kiev, and another one is under preparation for Odessa. We need them to be there and to give us the vision, the facts. Facts are low in this war, and Catherine, you said it. We are all frustrated when we see verifiable lie. So if the lie is verifiable, let's verify that it is a lie. And here we need the journalists to do the job, not only in Ukraine, also in the EU. When we started to design the Code of Practice Against Disinformation and the Digital Services Act, I had some complaints from some journalists that we want to instrumentalize them in the fight against disinformation, that we want to degrade them to some level of fact checkers. Yes, we do. We need them. We need the people who can work with facts, the professionals who can differentiate between facts and opinions to do the job, and to do the job freely, without fear. That's why we also recommended the member states in European Union to increase the safety arrangements for the journalists. And that is why we also see a very prominent role for the journalists under the system of the Code of Practice Against Disinformation. Today I should speak about the media law, and I have a tendency always to cover the whole range of things which we are doing, because to understand what we want to do through the Media Freedom Act, and I hate the acronym EMFA. You also said it. No, I tried to use the whole word, because once you place somewhere the label with the acronym, the thing is killed. Yeah? So when you try to understand what we want to do through the media law, Media Freedom Act, it's good to understand what we have under the Digital Services Act, in the Code of Practice Against Disinformation, partly also in our regulation against voters' minds manipulation by political advertising. This is all the I hope coherent story of Europe, that we want to somehow, how to put it, clean the air, the information space, without censorship. Is it possible? We believe it is. This is what we are trying to do. Yes, dear Catherine, I will be long because I'm still on the first page. Well, yeah, let's come to the Media Freedom Act. Here I have to thank EBU and Noel and all the colleagues for helping me, because you were thanking me, Noel, but I have to do the opposite, because to thank you, because with entering into this territory, I felt this is daring. And the previous commission, I remember, quite an influential man, Günther Oettinger, who had the media before, saying, oh yeah, they are doing something wrong in Poland, but we don't have any competence. Do we have it now? I believe we do. We have good lawyers who explained the legal competence we have. So we are staying in the single market field. But compared with Günther Oettinger times, we see a horrible decline of trust in media, and you spoke about it as well, or you spoke about it, and the increase of the impact of disinformation. We see the political pressures, we see the economic distress, and COVID just amplified everything. And so my 3-point test for regulating is here. Pan-European problem. We have some countries where the situation is not so critical, especially the well-behaving Scandinavians. Where are they here? Oh, but also, yeah, in Sweden we see some movement. And what we are doing with the media regulation, that it's not ideological. It's not about the content. It's just regulating the space for media. And the space for media is becoming more difficult in all places of Europe. And the second point, do we have a demand to do something on European level? I can say yes, we do. I heard so many calls to do more, and to especially to act when we see that the independence of media is under pressure in some member states. And it's growing. The pressures are growing. The third point is the legal basis. Yes, I believe we do have the competence to do that. What's in it? For the first time in EU law, safeguards are proposed to protect the editorial independence of the media. States should not interfere in editorial decisions, and we propose clear provisions with stronger safeguards against surveillance of journalists. No journalist should be spied on for doing their work. No public service media should become a propaganda channel of one party. We want the EU countries to set in law objective criteria for appointing the managers and governing board. The financing of public service media should be transparent and predictable, not used as a pressure tool. In the part for the public service media, you might see the continuation, logical, legal continuation of the Amsterdam Protocol. So we are not deviating to some revolutionary adventures. We put forward some rules mandating transparency of media ownership, transparency and fairness in the allocation of state advertising, and transparency of audience measurement systems. Third, we also want to strengthen the European coordination of national media regulators. The existing European Group of Media Regulators, ERGA, will be upgraded and become the European Board for Media Services. The law states it very clearly: the board shall act in full independence. We are creating new mechanisms such as a mutual assistance to ensure coordination and solidarity in dealing with real threats which may appear in the member states, and threats also such as foreign propaganda. We have seen that Russia's information war and enforcement of sanctions presented some challenge in this respect. You well remember the moment when we announced that we will be sanctioning Russia Today and Sputnik. We had to decide on the level of the Commission and recommend it to the member states. Did I feel equipped for such an unprecedented decision? It was heavily criticized that we are banning media. What I even heard in Germany, that Putin is following our example by banning Deutsche Welle and by chasing the Western media out of the country. Does Putin really need to have the example? He is the world champion in censorship. His lying is absolute. So, but coming back to the media law, I would appreciate in the future, in similar situations, to have a strong opinion of the national media regulators. Because the decision to sanction the media like Russia Today would be in a much stronger way justified or easy to explain. And I also want to be absolutely sure that we are not going too far as the Commission. Yeah? So here we predict some role for the national regulators also in these situations. And the digital platforms, yes, we didn't give the media any media exemption under the Digital Services Act. Here in the media law, we are introducing some kind of special treatment for the recognized professional media which keep the standards up, that it won't be that easy for the platforms to touch or to put their hands. No, they are not putting hands, no, they are all digital, but to act against such content. Last comment on Media Freedom Act. There is one article which seems to be innocent, and I even don't have it here from my beloved colleagues that I should mention it, but there is a right for the people to get access to trusted information. We need to guarantee this. Because at this moment, the wild, natural development rather shows that the people have a kind of right to be brainwashed, because it has such a power now. And that's why we wanted to balance the obligations of some, especially of the states, to hands off the media, and many other obligations for the Commission, also for the regulators. We wanted to balance it by the right of somebody. Who is the somebody? Of course, we speak about the European people, European citizens, who should have the right for trustworthy information. So, this is from my side. Marie, sorry, I skipped such a good part. It's normally, yes. Thank you very much for your attention. I try to be brief and explain the main things in the Media Freedom Act. And now,
thank you very much.
I was warned that you will be now shooting.
I am, yes, and you can stay here because we're going to ask you some questions. So thank you very much first. And thank you for these really personal words, and it feels like you really have a personal implication in this situation, not just Ukraine, which is very understandable, but the wider situation as well. So we've got some questions for you, some broad brushstroke questions. Firstly, we were talking about how, social media and platforms, everything's changed so rapidly, it feels like, in the last 10, 20 years. What do you think is the biggest change in the reporting of news, say in the last 5 years or so?
I think it's quicker and more superficial. I have to say that the way we got used to consume news, by especially from the digital sources, made the whole thing more quicker and more superficial. That's why I think that we should counter that and somehow rehabilitate. Is it the right word? Rehabilitate the value of the news, which are based on well-collected facts. And I think that we should renew also the people's desire to understand the things, not only consume things. How to do that? I think that it's the right thing to mention that we need to be better and quicker also in the media literacy education. We are funding a lot of projects in the member states. We try to convince many ministers of education that they should do more. What I hear from many of them, or some of them, we cannot improve too much and too quickly the media literacy, so that the people do not fall victims of this of this negative trend, because the teachers are not themselves digitally maybe savvy, but able to understand the dangers. So I think that we are doing the right thing also by starting with the teachers.
Yeah, so we're going to be hearing from Julianne from the Lie Detectors Project later on, who is involved in media literacy, so it works brilliantly with that. You said, Vice President, that you feel the pressures are growing in the media. You want to clean the information space. Just looking at Europe as a whole, what is your assessment of the state of media freedom, and perhaps even more the direction that media freedom is heading right now?
I will give you, maybe some will feel that this is a cynical answer. The media are lacking money, and the economic pressure is huge. And I have to honestly admit, we didn't find the way how to solve this in the Media Freedom Act. And I want to be honest with you. We tried, we were consulting a lot. The unfair business model, which is now when the advertisers' money land in and end up in the digital platforms. We try to get the money back somehow through the copyright rules and also through the pressure on the digital platforms to use the professional work of the journalists in the fight against disinformation. The fact-checking, which I mentioned at the beginning, the journalists should be well paid for that. But we see that the weaker economically the media are, the easier targets they are for both political, but mainly political pressure, but mainly the pressure on the market. Easy to buy, easy to merge, easy to influence. I hope the media law will help. At least somehow, but we did not address this main thing.
Well, when you unveiled the Media Freedom Act with Commissioner Breton, you outlined some of this. Now, you said it's not ideological. However, I've visited countries around the European Union, for example, Hungary, where representatives of the ruling party have said to my face, we believe that the European Commission specifically is in an ideological battle against this government and like-minded governments. This Media Freedom Act, they could well take it as being an attack on ideology.
Yeah, of course, it's not easy with Hungary, and I think it's more the battle in the field of values and not ideology. And what we would like to see in Hungary to be changed is the respect for the rule of law principle, which says that nobody should have absolute power, and Hungarian Fidesz is going in that direction through thousands of little steps. And it is interconnected with the steps of Hungarian official power against the uncomfortable media. So that's the situation. So let's make the uncomfortable media more comfortable by paying them, but you have to sign the agreement with the devil. No? You have to agree that you will become the part of the monopoly which is called KESMA. You will have an easy life, but we want something back. Yeah? So how was the question? No, it's not ideological. No, it's not. We just believe. I truly believe. Although some say that those old-fashioned liberal democratic rules, Jourova, wake up, we are entering new era. I believe that the state, represented by elected people by people, not by the God, should not interfere into the judiciary, into media, should keep the space broadly open for the civil society, and should not also tame the full state administration. These are the four things which should function in the state. Is it ideological? I think that this is a universal principle we would like to see in all the member states.
Well, I thought we'd move on to some more rapid-fire questions that we've prepared for you.
I was warned.
A little bit more personal. Yes, you were warned. So just a couple of minutes of those. Where do you personally get your news?
Okay, I need to cover 3 lines. The overall temperature of Europe. So I try to read Political, Guardian, Financial Times, and these kind of big news. And then country-specific news, where I, especially when I am going to the country, which is now the case, I am going to Greece tomorrow, the day after tomorrow, so I will try to jump into what's the temperature in the country. I was said there should be 28 degrees, but it's not what I want to know. I will be inside anyway. But the third line is what's happening in my country, and it's mainly the public broadcasters' news which I follow. And now, in the recent elections, the extremist party got high gain, and I am really worried. But it's another story.
Well,
and the fourth thing, I tried, yes. My dear, to read Russian news after the start of the invasion to understand the level of lie which they produce, because I follow and I speak Russian, and when I found out that the level of lie is absolute, I stopped doing that. So this
you felt
remains.
There was no more point.
Yes.
In terms of the very last news item that you read that really grabbed your attention?
Yeah, I think it was yesterday, the Financial Times opening article about the response of the West on Putin's nuclear blackmailing. I think that it is a very good article which also expresses that no, we will not bow to that. We are, of course, we take it seriously, but the response is ready.
And beyond the big headlines then, can you tell us about a news story that caught your eye at some point recently that wasn't one of the big headlines, but it was some journalism that maybe took you to a place that you hadn't expected to go?
I think I read some stories in Czech media about how the Ukrainian refugees are adapting to the new situation. Because at the beginning they came for 1 week, 2 weeks, then several months. Now they are getting maybe mentally ready for staying much longer, while having horrible fear what's happening to their fathers, brothers, and husbands. So these are stories covering the situation of normal people in totally abnormal situation. And if I can add the story from my life, it was not in newspaper, but I have 2 years old granddaughter, Victoria, and she is learning Czech words from her 3 years old friend Polina, who is Ukrainian. And when I was listening to those two girls, the Ukrainian teaching Victoria, hey, this is the word, I was really touched. So, and I think that we should read also these stories, because the support for Ukraine and to stand on the right side of the history is not only the matter of brain, it's also the matter of emotions. Thank you.
I'll just ask you to stay for a couple of questions from the audience. I'm sure there are lots and lots of people. I can see hands going up already. So there are mic runners who are going to be coming around. So we've got 3 hands up already. There's a lady right by the pillar there as well, who I think is invisible. So go ahead.
Thank you very much for this very touching and very inspiring speech. I'm Barbara Thomas. I'm coming from Germany, being second deputy head of the ZDF board, and I'm professor for international media in international comparison. My question is about the European Media Freedom Act. You got already that the German public service broadcasters are in some respect quite critical, because they think that the governance and regulation frame in Germany is quite securing the independence. I don't agree with that, but I would like to know, how will you answer their critique? And I have a second question, if I may, very shortly. And this is, why did you not, in the European Media Freedom Act, enhance more the possibility or the legal frame for the public service broadcasters to be active on the digital platforms? So a sort of carrying the Amsterdam Protocol to the digital content. These are my 2 questions. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Short answer on the second one. We promised also to the German representatives of the public service media that for that public service media part, we will keep on the level of the principles, not to prescribe things and not to micromanage how the things should be done in this sphere, but rather the standards and the principles, to have it set in stone of the European law, which will enable the action in case things are going in a wrong direction. The wrong direction might be something what the state would do. For instance, depriving the public broadcaster of the funding, or invading into the process of appointing and nominating the people to the board. So we wanted to be as general as possible. And coming back to your first question, the critique, I was heavily consulting also in Germany, and I promised that we will not, by the media law, destroy things which work well, and rather to set the standards high, so that majority of the member states can increase their standards on the basis of this law, and also to have in hand the possibility of, as I already said, acting in case things go wrong. Things can go wrong everywhere in Europe, and there might be everywhere the possibility of the elections which will deliver the winner who will have appetite to capture the public service media. So I believe that we need some safeguards on the European level. Okay, but how shall we work with the critics? Yes, of course, the legislative process has only started. I believed that I addressed all the criticism and the concerns, especially what I heard from media and Scandinavian countries, that we designed the Media Freedom Act as something which is regulating the space for media, in introducing necessary safeguards for worsening of situation, and not regulating the media themselves, and not at all regulating the content. And this is false, what I heard from German publishers, that this is the first step to introducing some kind of state ordered censorship. I cannot agree with that.
Thank you very much for your remarks. Christine Buagia from AFP, Europe Director. My question is also about the Media Freedom Act. There's been also a strong reaction from the associations of European newspapers and magazines, who are also regretting interference in some of their business. How do you see the discussion with them? I mean, how can you react to that? Is there some kind of compromise which can be found, and where?
I predict that we will see maybe difficult and demanding legislative process ahead of us. Because what I heard we have 2 more co-legislators to say yes to that. The European Parliament, I think, will be more in favor of having the strong set of rules for protecting the media. From the side of the member states, I expect that there will be a lot of proposals for changes, which might lead to the final compromise, which might copy the situation we saw many times before, that the compromise will make all of us sad and frustrated. Usually the compromise does not make happy only one or 2 sides. So, of course, there are things which, and the compromise, by the way, is usually very close to the original proposal of the Commission. That's my experience after 8 years of watching and negotiating the final version of the legislation. And I was promoting very difficult pieces of legislation like the Whistleblowers Directive. You can imagine such a politicum, or GDPR. And after big storms, suddenly at the end of the day, maybe we were tired or they were tired, but they came closer to what the Commission originally proposed. Because we have the data, we are doing proper analysis, and after all, we always try to come with something which will be proportionate, which will not create any losers and winners, which will address the real problems.
Gentleman over here, blue shirt.
Thank you very much. My name is Mogens Blikker Bjerregaard, today representing also the European Federation of Journalists and the Danish Union of Journalists. Thank you very much for your always strong support for independent journalism and free media. I have just a small proposal for you within the European Media Freedom Act, and this is about the moral rights for journalists. You were stressing the need for citizens, European citizens, to get trusted information. And to get trusted information, it's extremely important that you have the moral rights for journalists, so you can keep your the control of all your content when it is brought in broadcast, in newspaper, or wherever. This part, the moral rights, which also is protecting sources, how far do you go in the EMFA, European Media Freedom Act, about this?
Well, we tried to keep the promise that we will be a regulator space for media, rather than going into the rights of journalists. Which rights? Moral rights. Moral rights. Yeah. Can you explain what you mean? I have never been a journalist. I believe that.
That means that you have the right of your content. So when other media outlets wants to use it, it is the journalist at the end of the day that decide that it could be used in a different way, or it could be reused, and so this is the moral rights. There's economical rights bound up to that, but we leave that today. Yes. We leave that today. It's about the copyright directive, but this is somehow linked with that directive as well. The moral rights should be very strong here, because that is protecting the sources.
Yeah, we are I think we try to strengthen the position of the journalists in the media law. But it's true that we are not that explicit, and it's true also that I saw this kind of protection in the copyright directive. You say that it's only economic right. I think that the copyright directive can also justify the possibility for the journalist to go to the court in case there is something wrong happening to him. But I am just now. We call it in Czech language boiling, now cooking from the water. I will have to look into it. Of course, we will have different proposals for improvements over the legislative process. So I believe that if this is the big gap you see in the media law, it might appear also still in the negotiating process. But at this moment, we tried to not to go too much into this field of individual rights of the journalists. Only several points like the protection of the sources and protection against the spyware use is there.
Thank you. So just time for one very last question, because apparently you have to run away. Do we have time for one more, or is that the last one?
Mr. Schinas will
One last
be.
quick one from Dave over there.
I will
Dave,
buy
make it
him a
quick.
coffee.
So, Dave Keating from France 24. Just a quick question. I noticed when you listed the three main publications that you read, they're all publications based in the US and the UK. Is it a problem that the world gets its news about the European Union filtered through countries that are not in the European Union?
I'm sure you read France 24 as well.
Yeah. I think I could have mentioned others. Of course, every morning I open Politico Brussels with mixed feelings whether I want to be in or not. No, it was just a spontaneous first-hand answer. But of course, I read a lot the translations from the non-English writing media, because, as I said, I need to understand the temperature in the member states, and so don't take it so precisely that I only read the American and UK. And by the way, in Politico, to be or not to be in Politico, in 2 years' time I will be waking up and I will have to find another hobby.
Thank you so much, Vice President, for your answers. Thank you.